Joseph, you're coming to us from Montana. How are you doing today?
Doing very well. Thanks, Bert. And thanks for having me on. It's a great honor to be with you.
Oh, well, great. Well, uh, Joseph, I really have kind of focused on things from that core clarity, strengths finder view. Uh, but being a clueless, blueless, I'm a force of nature, right? And so uh, the people thing doesn't come as natural. I have to be more intentional. And so I'm intentionally reaching out to somebody who has kind of made it just a passion in their life to engage in communication at deeper levels. What was it that got you to write a book, The Search to Belong? And for those of us who don't have learner, our input, our context in our top five, and don't do a lot of reading, can you give us a synopsis of that? And what was it that really moved you to write that book?
Sure. I'm also a clueless. I'm a force of nature. And so I get a lot of comments of people who actually know me. How did you write a best-selling book about belonging? How did that, how, how would that ever come about? And quite honestly, I tease a lot about, well, I think it's because I don't have the blue talents that I can actually step back and look at it from a different angle and kind of understand it from someone who doesn't really have those in my top five. Um, the search to belong came from a communication theory. Edward Hall in the 60s has a communication theory called proxemics. And what he said was, we communicate in four spaces: public, social, personal, and intimate. And when I was teaching advanced communication as an adjunct professor, one day I wrote those on the board. We were talking about Edward Hall, and I just said something that wasn't true, and which is, sometimes can be the case with me. And so I said, what Edward found out was how we belong to one. That stopped me in my tracks, because that's not at all what Edward was trying to do. And I literally sat down in the classroom and looked at the board, and kind of this whole discovery just opened in that, hey, my question then was, if we want to communicate in public, social, personal, and intimate space, is that the way we want to belong? Is that the way we seek to belong to one another? And so I went on a 7-year research project before the book came out, trying to discover, is this a good framework to talk about belonging in a more robust way than just lumping everything into this community belonging conversation? What I found out was that at the core of all humans, we do want to belong. And in fact, that's how we internally measure whether we have community or not, is if we have public, social, personal, and intimate belongings with other people or other organizations. And when those are in a healthy balance, a healthy harmony, not really balance, but harmony with one another, we feel a sense of health. Mm. And so I think that that's one of the interesting things about this time, is that I know, because we went across the planet to discover in different cultures what it meant to belong in these four spaces. And each culture has its own way of describing what it what it means to belong to another person, for instance, in personal space or in a personal community, or what it means to be intimate with someone, or a public belonging. Every culture has a different definition of it, but all four still remain. So as we're traveling into this new normal, as we are calling it now, what's going to be interesting is all four of those will remain. It's how we now redefine what, for instance, personal belonging means, or intimate belonging means, or public or social. And all those are going to be redefined. And specifically, when we, just as an example, when we talk about touch, how touch is redefined in each one of those spaces is going to be a new learning for all of us.
What are some things that you're seeing already in terms of how you think as we come out of this global crisis, that in some ways it's isolating us and it's forcing us to communicate and to build a whole new level of community that most of us may or may not, well, most of us are really not that comfortable with, or we feel it's lacking. Uh, do you have any early insights? I know you've got a couple of forward thinking talents, but as you're looking into the future, what are some things that you're observing in terms of how this is going to affect the interpersonal connection and communication of community?
Well, one of the things I think that we have to remember is that we know through neuroscience that, for instance, you and I talking like this, and if we would just let the brain do its job and not interrupt it, it thinks that you're in the room with me, meaning that
Okay.
it is spitting out the same chemical compounds with you on screen as if you were sitting here live. So our brain is doing its job, saying, oh, look, there's someone right in front of you and you're talking to them, and they're all the same chemicals are happening. The problem is that our mind gets in the way and shuts that off and says, wait, they're not in the room. What are you thinking? And so that interruption, because we're not culturally learned to accept that this can be in one of those four spaces, public, social, personal, or intimate, that we're confused. And that's where the vertigo comes in, right? Is when our mind interrupts our brain and says, wait a minute, that's not what I've learned. And so I think one of the things that for me that I'm observing is that it's so interesting that many people throughout, let's say, the social media boom and now the online virtual boom, many people have come out and have pronounced the evils of that. For instance, connecting on Facebook, you're not really friends if you connect on. That's not really a friend. Or if you're on a virtual online, that's not really connecting. That's not authentic and genuine. Well, all they're saying is their mind yet hasn't learned to accept what their brain already knows. That yes, it can be. And I think that that's hope. That's really hope, because that's learned behavior. And that's what I learned in Search for Belonging is when I went from culture to culture, those are learned behaviors in each of those four spaces. That the way we defined it is learned. That's great news because we can unlearn it and learn new, right? It's doing this over online is not evil. There's not evil to it. It's another way we can learn to significantly enrich our lives and connect. Well, like I pointed out in the article, I think we already have tools if we just pay attention to them and maybe reframe them. We already have insights into the way, let's talk about touch. We have insight into the way we want to be touched. And it's not just physical. Like, for instance, the absence of physical touch actually creates a psychological problem, which is called skin hunger. And that's not really a physical hunger, although that's a part of it. But the main part of it is psychological. It's all in our head. Oh, we need this and we want it. And it is a part of what we as humans desire, is that physical touch. However, like for instance, Chapman's whole discussion about the 5 love languages, I would submit those are 5 touch languages.
Okay, yeah, explain that. I love that connection. I'm familiar with Chapman's writings. Can you explain that in detail,
so
each one?
Let me just put up a graphic. Can you see that?
Yes.
So, he says that there's 5 love languages, right? And I think these are 5 touch points. Words of affirmation is a way to touch a person who feels love touched through words of affirmation. Acts of service. Yeah, my wife loves acts of service. I know that if I do the dishes, that I have brownie points for like a year just by doing them one evening. She just loves that, and she feels touched emotionally and psychologically supported, and so all of these are that way. Receiving gifts, quality time. So you notice that there's four, and then there's the one who I'm one of these. I am a physical touch. When you touch me, I feel love. Now, just know that physical receives their love or their touch through physical touch. That's only 19% of the population.
Okay.
So we have to learn, one, we can use all of this tool for the rest of those, what would it be, 81%. 81% of the population can actually feel touched and not get kind of skin hunger through these other ways.
Joseph, again, thank you so much. And hope you guys can take some of what Joseph's done here. We'll have a link where you can get those 5 touches, and you take it from there. Joseph, I'll give you the last word here.
Well, thanks, Bert. I really appreciate being on. And I would love to hear from anyone in your audience who is experiencing this, struggling with it, because I'm a learner. I want all that data so that I can try to help others assimilate back into a new reality.
Okay. And Joseph, how can people best reach out to you?
The best way would be emailing me at joseph@josephrmyers.com, MYERS. It's down on the bottom of the screen there. You can get a hold of me, and I'm sure you could put a link up to it. I appreciate it.
You bet. We'll all over it. All right, Joseph, have a great day. Thanks, everybody, for joining us, and give us some feedback of how helpful this was for you. Everybody take care, and all the best.